story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitlin Clark.
The smile you see on camera is one thing, but what happens when the lights go off and the losses pile up? For Caitlin Clark, the face of a revolution in women's basketball, the fairy tale is starting to show its cracks, revealing a much harsher, more brutal reality. The world sees the record-breaking rookie, the $28 million Nike deal, the sold-out arenas, and the seemingly effortless charisma. But behind the scenes, a storm is brewing, a fury that has been simmering for weeks and has now reached its undeniable boiling point. After the Indiana Fever's gut-wrenching, down-to-the-wire loss against the Dallas Wings, the quiet whispers of her frustration became a deafening roar. And now, one of the most powerful and influential voices in all of sports media, Stephen A. Smith, has just stepped forward to confirm what many have suspected all along. Caitlin Clark is furious, and the situation unfolding within the WNBA is far more intense, personal, and potentially explosive than anyone has been willing to admit publicly. The final score of that game against the Dallas Wings was a nail-biting 87-84. On paper, it was just another narrow defeat in a season already full of them for the struggling Indiana Fever. But this loss felt profoundly different. It was a game where Caitlin Clark did everything she was supposed to do and more. She wasn't just a scorer. She was a masterful facilitator, a court general dishing out a career-high 13 assists, threading passes through impossible windows, and desperately trying to will her team to a much-needed victory. She played with the vision, the passion, and the competitive fire that made her a global phenomenon at Iowa. Yet, when that final cruel buzzer sounded, the result was depressingly familiar. Defeat. The cameras, always trained on her, caught glimpses of the truth she tried to hide. A clenched jaw, a 1,000-yard stare into the distance, a frustration so palpable it couldn't be masked by professional courtesy or post-game platitudes. This wasn't the simple disappointment of a normal loss. It was the raw, unfiltered anger of a born winner, a generational talent being forced to accept a reality of mediocrity. This was the definitive tipping point, the moment the carefully constructed public image of the smiling rookie began to crumble, revealing the raging inferno of a competitor who was being pushed to the very edge of her tolerance. But the full story wasn't just written on Clark's exhausted and furious face. It was about to be broadcast to millions by a man who never, ever minces his words. And his confirmation would change the entire narrative. And that's where Stephen A. Smith comes into the picture, transforming locker room whispers into a national headline. On his massive platform, he didn't just offer a routine game analysis or a few superficial talking points. He delivered a bombshell that confirmed the very heart of the issue, lending his immense credibility to the rumors that had been swirling. Stephen A. revealed to the world that the frustration people were seeing wasn't just speculation or media-driven drama. It was real, it was profound, and it was deep-seated. He painted a vivid picture of Caitlin Clark, not as a struggling rookie adjusting to the big leagues, but as a killer, a true alpha competitor whose spirit was being systemically crushed by the dysfunctional circumstances surrounding her. He explained, with his signature passion, that Clark's fury stemmed from a toxic combination of inescapable factors. First, and most obviously, the team's frustrating inability to win close games despite her best individual efforts. A player of her caliber, someone who rewrote the record books in college, is fundamentally wired to dominate. And being on a losing team is a special kind of hell that eats away at the soul of a champion. Second, and more critically, Stephen A. pointed directly to the blatant and often unpunished targeting she faces every single night she steps on the court. He wasn't just talking about tough, physical defense. He was talking about a consistent pattern of physical aggression, of cheap shots, off-ball hip checks, and borderline dirty plays that seem designed to do more than just stop a play. They are designed to intimidate, to injure, and to send a message. He essentially confirmed that Clark is furious because she feels completely unprotected and unsupported, not only by the referees who seem to swallow their whistles when she gets hit, but also by a league that seems strangely content to let its biggest star, its golden goose, take a relentless beating. His powerful words instantly transformed the entire narrative from a rookie adjusting to the pros to a superstar fighting a lonely war on multiple fronts. And his public confirmation gave a booming voice to the profound silent rage that was clearly building inside her. But this war wasn't just confined to the Indiana Fever or a single bad night in Dallas. Stephen A. was merely shining a blinding spotlight on a much darker, unspoken conflict that has been brewing across the entire Women's National Basketball Association since the moment her name was called on draft night. The brutal, almost hostile welcome Caitlin Clark has received in the WNBA is no secret to anyone who has been paying attention. The incident involving Chindy Carter of the Chicago Sky, who called her a BCH before leveling her with a malicious blindside hip check far away from the ball, was just the most visible and egregious example of a league-wide phenomenon. It seems that players from every team are lining up to take their shot at the Golden Goose, to deliver their welcome to the league moment. But the critical question that Stephen A. Smith's commentary forces us all to ask is, why? Is this just standard rookie hazing for a highly touted number 1 draft pick, a rite of passage that all greats must endure? Or is it something far more sinister and personal? The whispers in the sports world and the evidence on the court strongly suggest the latter. Many believe there is a deep-seated jealousy and a powerful resentment toward Clark that permeates the league. She walked into the WNBA with a $28 million Nike contract before playing a single professional game. She flies to games on private jets sponsored by Gainbridge, and she commands a level of global media attention that even the league's most decorated veteran superstars could only have dreamed of. The prevailing narrative among some veterans is that Clark hasn't paid her dues. They see her as a media-hyped creation who is getting undue credit for saving a league that they have been tirelessly building with their own blood, sweat, and tears for years. So, the hard fouls, the off-ball shoves, the constant physicality, and the aggressive posture aren't just about playing tough defense. They are calculated messages. They represent a coordinated, albeit unspoken, effort to physically and mentally break her, to prove that she doesn't belong on the pedestal the world has so quickly placed her on. It's an unspoken conspiracy to humble the rookie who changed their entire world overnight, turning every single matchup into a potential battleground where the objective isn't just to win the game, but to punish the star. This unrelenting external assault is one thing, but the true, deep-seated source of Caitlin Clark's fury might be coming from much closer to home, from inside her own locker room. While Clark is forced to battle a league that seems determined to knock her down a peg, she returns to a locker room that is itself a simmering pressure cooker. The Indiana Fever are not a championship contending team, and everyone knows it. They are a young, rebuilding squad that was at the bottom of the standings long before she arrived. Suddenly, this entire franchise's hopes for relevance and a significant portion of the entire league's financial future were placed squarely, and perhaps unfairly, on the shoulders of a 22-year-old rookie. That is an absolutely impossible burden for any single athlete to carry, no matter how talented they are. This is where her visible frustration becomes layered and incredibly complex. It's not just about the final score. It's about the way they are losing. A string of close games, repeated fourth-quarter defensive breakdowns, and a constant sense of being just one or two smart plays away from success can be uniquely infuriating for a player like Clark, who is used to elevating everyone around her to a championship standard. Consequently, speculation has begun to run rampant about the internal dynamics of the team itself. Is she truly receiving the full support of her teammates, or do some of them also harbor a quiet resentment for the media circus that follows her every move, turning them into background characters in their own story? There's the complex dynamic with Aaliyah Boston, last year's Rookie of the Year, who is now the second option on her own team. Is head coach Christy Sides doing enough to design an offensive system that both protects Clark from physical abuse and maximizes her once-in-a-generation talent? These are the uncomfortable questions being asked in hushed tones, because when a generational talent looks that consistently angry on the court, it's rarely just about the opponent. It's often a glaring sign of deeper cracks within the foundation of her own team, a profound feeling of isolation and systemic failure that can be even more damaging and demoralizing than any cheap shot from an opponent. The physical toll of this brutal welcome to the WNBA is plain for everyone to see. The bruises, the hard falls to the floor, the constant need to fight through illegal screens and jersey tugging. It's a relentless night-after-night assault on her body. But the mental and emotional toll of this experience is arguably even greater, and this is the core of the crisis that Stephen A. Smith was exposing. Imagine, for a moment, being hailed as the singular savior of an entire professional sports league. Every single game your team plays is broadcast on national television, a new standard for the WNBA. Every single one of your box scores is scrutinized and debated on talk shows. Every minor sign of on-court frustration is clipped, replayed in slow motion, and dissected by an army of analysts and social media critics. She carries the immense weight of TV ratings, ticket sales, and the future relevance of the entire league on her young shoulders. That kind of suffocating pressure is unimaginable. She can't have a single bad shooting night without it becoming a national headline declaring she's a bust. She can't show natural human emotion without being labeled a poor sport or a diva. Now, add to that suffocating pressure the constant nagging feeling that you are being physically targeted by your own peers, the very people who are directly benefiting from the Caitlin Clark effect through bigger crowds and more lucrative TV deals. It's a perfect recipe for psychological burnout and deep-seated resentment. The league, in its desperate desire to capitalize on her unprecedented fame, has seemingly failed in its most basic duty to protect its most valuable and transformative asset. The palpable fury that Stephen A. Smith confirmed isn't just about losing a single basketball game to the Dallas Wings. It is the primal scream of a young woman being pushed to her absolute limit, fighting for her place, her respect, and even her physical well-being in a league that seems to both desperately need her and deeply resent her at the exact same time. The sheer injustice of it all is a heavy burden, and it's being fueled by one of the oldest and most powerful motivators in human history: cold, hard cash. Let's be brutally honest and direct about the financial reality here, because it's the unspoken accelerant that has been poured all over this raging fire. Caitlin Clark's official WNBA salary is just over $76,000 for her rookie year. To put that in perspective, it's less than what many people make in a standard office job. Meanwhile, she has a signature shoe deal with Nike worth a reported $28 million, along with a portfolio of massive, multi-year endorsements from global companies like Gatorade, State Farm, and Panini. This colossal, almost absurd disparity between her league salary and her commercial earnings creates a bizarre and undeniably toxic dynamic within the league's locker rooms. Her opponents, many of whom are decorated veterans making not much more than her official WNBA salary, see a player who is a walking, talking corporation. They see the private flights she takes, the global ad campaigns she stars in, and they compare it to their own long years of grinding in relative obscurity for a fraction of the pay and recognition. The resentment is almost inevitable. It's human nature. They feel that she is reaping the rewards of a house that they built with their own hands. In their eyes, she represents a new wave of corporate-backed commercialism that overshadows the grit, the substance, and the history of their game. So when they foul her hard, it's not just a basketball play. It is a deeply personal and political statement. It's a raw, physical way of saying, your millions and your fame can't protect you here. On this court, you have to earn our respect the hard way. This financial undercurrent adds a thick layer of deep-seated bitterness to the physical aggression she faces every game. She is single-handedly making everyone richer, the league, the teams, the TV networks, and the players themselves through increased revenue and exposure. And yet, she remains the primary target of their collective hostility. This profound and bitter irony is not lost on a competitor as intelligent and aware as Clark, and it's undoubtedly a major factor fueling the fury that is now impossible for the league or the media to ignore. The loss to the Dallas Wings and Stephen A. Smith's subsequent emphatic confirmation have opened the floodgates of public discourse. What was once seen by some as isolated incidents of on-court chippiness is now being correctly viewed as a disturbing and persistent pattern of behavior. And the whispers from inside sources suggest that Caitlin Clark's legendary patience is wearing dangerously thin. This isn't just about a few tough losses in a challenging rookie season anymore. This is about her long-term future and her willingness to endure this hostile environment. Insiders and top-tier analysts are finally starting to ask the tough, forward-looking questions. How long can a player of her caliber, a true basketball prodigy, tolerate being on a losing team while also being treated like a league-wide piñata? There is credible talk that her frustration is rapidly approaching a breaking point, a point of no return where something fundamental has to give. Will she use her immense leverage to demand changes from the Fever's front office, perhaps requesting a trade for more veteran support? Will she finally break her silence and publicly call out the referees and the league itself for their consistent failure to protect her? This situation is no longer just about basketball. It's about a young superstar beginning to realize the full extent of her power and contemplating how and when to use it. The fury isn't just a fleeting emotion she feels after a loss. It's becoming a defining part of her identity in the WNBA. It's the righteous fury of a prodigy trapped in a dysfunctional and unsupportive system, the simmering anger of a natural-born leader without a winning army, and the deep indignation of a priceless asset being actively damaged by the very institution it's single-handedly enriching. The status quo is becoming untenable, and many around the league believe we are rapidly approaching a moment of truth where Clark's quiet, seething frustration will finally explode into a league-altering confrontation that could reshape the future of the sport. In the end, Stephen A. Smith didn't just confirm that Caitlin Clark was mad about losing a basketball game. He pulled back the curtain on a global superstar at a perilous crossroad. The deep-seated fury he so passionately described is the inevitable product of a perfect storm, the daily agony of team failure, the personal sting of league-wide resentment, the crushing weight of unprecedented global pressure, and the profound injustice of being both the league's designated savior and its primary public target. The loss to the Dallas Wings was not the cause of this crisis. It was merely the symptom of a much larger, more systemic disease spreading through the WNBA. Caitlin Clark's journey in the pros is proving to be far more than the triumphant victory lap everyone expected. It is a brutal, bare-knuckle fight for survival, for respect, and for her own physical and mental well-being. Her ultimate legacy will not be defined by her three-pointers or her endorsement deals alone, but by how she navigates this treacherous crucible of hostility and jealousy. The real question is no longer about whether she can live up to the immense hype. The question is, what happens next? Will this all-consuming fury, this righteous anger, forge her into an even more dominant and unstoppable force, a hardened icon determined to conquer the very league that tried to break her spirit? Or will the relentless pressure, the constant physical abuse, and the glaring institutional failures ultimately succeed in extinguishing the brightest star the sport of women's basketball has ever seen? The answer will not only determine her future but the very soul of the league she was supposed to save.